This is Nasha Kasha, Ukrainian Almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 16 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. Vitayu, my name is Stefan Andrusiak. This is episode 181, which I recorded in Penticton, British Columbia. The Miloshenko family hails from Saskatchewan, applauded for 60 years of distinctive gospel harmonies. August 9th, the Miloshenkos were in Penticton, part of a farewell tour. You'll hear excerpts from that night, snippets from one or two of their many albums, and samples from their Voice of Prophecy and Quiet Hour radio broadcasts. Today on Nasha Kasha, the Miloshenkos.
We'll go parading through the distant stars right down the Milky Way. The planets Jupiter and Neptune and Mars won't even be halfway. Oh yes, I'm moving up to glory land. Moving, holding to his nail scar.
Hello, my name is Pastor Greg Wellman. I'm the pastor here of the Penticton Seventh-day Adventist Church. We believe in creation, that God created us on the seventh and rested on the seventh day. The other part, the Adventist, is we believe He's coming back. We came from Him, and we're looking forward to going back with Him to heaven. You know, Christianity is a singing religion. We believe that music goes hand in hand with knowing Christ, and knowing God is something to sing about. This evening was just a kind of a special treat to have the Miloshenko family, which is crisscrossing the country. You know, we're just a small community here, but they were happy to come and stop at Penticton, and it was just special to have them come and share their music with us.
Oh yes, I'm moving up to glory land. Moving, holding to his nail-scarred hand. Don't know when I'm leaving, but I'm ready to go. When I get to heaven, I'll be welcome, I know. Moving up to glory, all the way to glory. Moving up to glory land.
It says quiet room right in here, so maybe we can get the door closed.
Hello, my name is Jody Miloshenko, part of the Miloshenko family singers who've been singing together since we were, 60-some years now. My grandparents on both sides of my family, my mom's and dad's side, they immigrated from Kharkov, Ukraine, in 1902. And they knew each other in the Ukraine, the grandparents. And when they immigrated, they ended up in the same community in central Saskatchewan.
Now, 1902, the first emigres came in 1891, so they were pioneers.
Absolutely, and they were homesteaders there in Saskatchewan, where the Canadian government offered a quarter section of land for $10, but it was uncultivated. And so you go back up there today and all those beautiful farms, wheat, canola, most of those farms in Saskatchewan and Alberta are the results of these Ukrainian immigrants that came and worked that land incredibly.
What kind of farmers were there? What were the crops?
The farms around where I grew up, most of them were wheat farmers. Wheat, some oats. Of course, they all grew alfalfa and hay because they all had cattle that they had to feed. But most of it was wheat and oats.
There was a hesitancy in teaching Ukrainian to the children of these forebears of yours. Can you reflect on that?
Yes, I can. My mom and dad regret the fact that they did not teach Russian. They spoke Russian and Ukrainian fluently. But there was so much prejudice. It was literally prejudice against the Ukrainian Russian-speaking people. My dad, he told us about they would get the strap from the teacher if they spoke Ukrainian at school or Russian. My parents were Russian-speaking Ukrainians, and they also spoke Ukrainian. And so they decided, you know what, we're not going to put our kids through that. But there was a lot of prejudice against the Eastern Europeans during that time.
Was there a greater welcome in the Protestant faiths in Canada than there were in the traditional Catholic Orthodox for these newcomers? Or how did that happen? Or was it from the old country that Protestantism came across with them?
My grandparents were Russian Mennonites on both sides of the family. They're very conservative. And part of that organization, part of the family heard about the Sabbath message of the Seventh-day Adventist message, and part of them became Seventh-day Adventists. But, you know, there was a closeness within that Christian community that pretty much transcended denominational boundaries. There was some fallout with my mom and dad and my mom and dad's side of the family, where some of the Russian Orthodox Mennonites were very, very upset that they would leave that, you know, the staid historic church. But that went by the wayside.
Mennonites were known for their farming techniques.
Well, let me tell you what, they were some of the hardest working people. They used to, even to this day, the reputation they have is those were the best farms in the country.
I won't keep you long, but can you just reflect on growing up in Saskatchewan?
Well, we moved when I was just a little, I wasn't quite 10. But I just absolutely love, you know, you can take the boy out of the farm, but you can't take the farm out of the boy. I still just love spending time on the farm.
Could you locate it for us in the province?
Sure. 40 miles directly west of Saskatoon, in a little community of Arlee. There was Arlee and Struan, and these were the areas. My dad's side of the family was from Arlee, my mom's side from Struan, which is 3 miles apart. And actually, my cousin to this day still farms the homestead. It's still in the family, 120 years later. But it was pretty rugged. I have incredible memories of growing up on the farm. Life was incredibly simple. Up until I was 7 years old, we didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water. We had the one-holer outside. We had the pump. We had a wood stove. That's where my mom cooked. I mean, life was really simple. You'd think I was, Little House on the Prairie. That's what it was. But there was an incredible work ethic and the value of hard work and being close as a family. We grew up singing together. That's what kind of bonded our, the 5 boys together. Even to this day, we're probably closer than any 5 boys I know.
You spoke up there about your mother whispering words to you and teaching you the lyrics to the songs.
My mom had perfect pitch. We didn't have a piano in our home, yet she taught herself how to play the piano. She just sat. She started learning how to play the piano at church. So we'd be driving, in our car, and let's learn this song. So she'd sing the first tenor, into my ear, or the second tenor, the lead. She'd sing the first tenor in my brother Rudy's ear, and then she'd sing the baritone part to my other brother. She just had this incredible musical gift. My dad, now, he was known as the singer of the family. His deep bass voice was, heard all over the country. But my mom was really the best musician of the two.
And it was his voice that was the ticket into the States and into some relative fame within Christian music.
Exactly, because back in the day when he was first recognized, they had a live radio broadcast that went coast to coast, and it was raising money for the Tuberculosis Association. There was a huge tuberculosis outbreak, and so he would get on, and they had this kind of a talent show.
In Saskatchewan, there was a tuberculosis.
Right out of Saskatoon. On CFQC, he would sing, and it would be broadcast, and he raised more money than any of the musicians out there. And so before you know it, he was, being invited to all these wonderful gala events. It was through that, and then he ended up singing bass with a very well-known gospel radio quartet out of Los Angeles called the Voice of Prophecy, the King's Herald's Quartet.
Lead me gently home, Father. Lead me gently home. When life's toils are ended and parting days have come, sin no more shall tempt me. Ne'er from thee I'll roam, if thou'lt only lead me, Father, lead me gently home. Lead me gently home, Father. Lead me gently home, Father, lest I fall upon the wayside. Lead me gently home. I well remember how years ago, when I was just a lad, how after school hours I'd work around the farm with Dad, up there in cold Saskatchewan, where full-grown steers might weigh a ton. My closest friend were my Long John. I'd get so cold and worn out when eventide would come, and I'd get all anxious like about the journey home. Well, Dad, he always led the way. Once in a while he'd turn around and say, so cheering like and tender, "Ну, сыночек, ходим, пошли дома." Come, my son, we're almost home. You know, it always used to help me some as I followed Father home. Well, I'm older and grayer and feebler now, and even a little trembling at knee, as all of you can see. Yet life seems much the same as then. At least it seems to me. For I feel kind of worn out as eventide has come, and I'm getting anxious about the journey home. Oh, still my Father leads the way. And now and then I hear him say, as Dad said then, come, my son, we're almost home. And same as then, it helps me some as I follow Father home. Lead me gently home, Father. Lead me gently home, Father. lest I fall upon the wayside. Lead me gently,
Tragically, that came to an abrupt end because he ended up with a cancerous growth in his throat that required surgery. This is in the days when everything was live. They'd go to the Mutual Studios in Hollywood at 6 o'clock Sunday morning for the East Coast feed, and then they'd come back at 9 o'clock, do a West Coast feed. So everything was live. Well, the doctors told him he'd never sing again, that he'd never even talk. And it was probably the most low point in his life where he had to give up what he loved doing the best. And he was so dejected. He said, they offered him a position to work in the Bible school and so forth. That he said, no, I'll just go back to, what I love doing. I'll just go back to the farm up there in Saskatchewan. And he was also a teacher. He had gone through they called it normal school back then. He had a teacher certificate. So he was a teacher and he was farming at the same time. And he had 5 boys. He figured, you know what? I got 5 hired hands here I don't hire. And so he bought more land, he bought more equipment, and then one Friday night, middle of the night, here came a call from a guy who had heard my dad sing, when he was in L.A., and the rest is history. He invited my dad to become his singing evangelist, something very similar to what George Beverly Shea did with Billy Graham. Became his singing evangelist, and the other part of the ticket was, hey, I've got these 5 boys, my wife, and they all sing with me. And so our music ministry started when I was 9 years old.
I have heard of a land on a faraway strand. 'Tis a beautiful home of the soul, built by Jesus on high. There we never shall die. 'Tis a land where we never grow.
In a land where we'll never grow.
1991, Ukraine gained independence. Your dad took his ministry to Kharkiv?
He did.
And you were with him?
My brother Lonnie was. He went also Kharkiv, and he also went to Borislav. And they conducted some evangelistic soul-winning meetings. They helped construct a little church. That was, my 2 nephews went with my dad. And that was quite an emotional experience for my dad, realizing what 80 years of communism had done to these people, and still they had such a tremendous heart to hear the gospel. And the gospel, just exploded over there during those years.
Is that church still standing? Do you know?
Yes.
And what's it called, and where is it? Do you know?
It's in Borislav. It's in Borislav. Yeah. My brother Lonnie he went there, but I didn't get a chance to go there. But so the blood of the martyrs is a seed of the gospel, and all those during the Cold War years in Russia, in the Soviet Union, Ukraine, there's still those faithful people that just had such a thirst for the gospel. One of the interesting things that happened was this. My dad, for years, he did the music in Ukrainian from a radio broadcast was called The Voice of Hope, and the gentleman, his name was Nicholas Ilchuk, and he recorded these evangelists, these Bible lectures in Ukrainian, and they were not allowed to broadcast them in the Soviet Union, but they were able to find a big 1 million watt station out of Portugal, that they broke through. The Iron Curtain was really that they were jamming all the radio signals into that country. Nothing we get through. But this broadcast, they would keep changing the signal on it, and it got through. And my dad, when he went back there after the Iron Curtain, after the fall of the Soviet Union, he went back there and he talked to many people that it was illegal for them to own radios, just the radio that the Russian government gave them, the Soviet government gave them. But many of them, they would hide under their haystacks in their barn or out in the field, and they would tune in, and they would hear my dad singing in Ukrainian and this message from Portugal that just kept jamming through. And only in the kingdom will we know that footprint of how many people heard the gospel, in those incredibly oppressive situations. And it was amazing.
When did he die, and did his cancer catch up with him?
Yes, he passed away in 2013, 6 years ago. His last year or so was very, very difficult. He was 90 when he passed, but he'd had prostate cancer, and then it spread to every one of his organs. And so, Jesus is going to give him all things brand new when he comes again.
And your mom?
Mom passed away 10 years ago, and she had a series of very serious strokes. And so she was 89 when she passed.
Now, there are 23 ultimately in your group?
23 kids, grandkids in their immediate family. So the 5 boys have a total of, I haven't even thought about this. Okay, let's see. There's 3, 5, 7, 10, 11. They have 11 grandkids, and then probably another dozen or more great grandkids.
That's more kids than there are letters in the name Milashenko.
Yeah, exactly.
I am going to that city far beyond the sky. I have made my reservation for my home on high. My soul was bought on Calvary by the Father's only Son, and He has my mansion ready when my work is done. God made a way for me past the crystal sea, coming back someday. Take me home to stay, I'll live forever. On that golden shore, happy day, God made a way. Soon my mansion will be ready, I'll be going home. Never more to be discouraged, never more to roam. And on some happy morning, all the dead in Christ shall rise. And I'll go to meet my Lord up yonder in the sky. Made a way for me, past the crystal sea, coming back someday. Take me home to stay, I'll live forever. Live forevermore, on that golden shore. Happy day, God made a way, God made a way for me, past the crystal sea, coming back someday. Take me home to stay, I'll live forever. Live forevermore, on that golden shore. Happy day, God made a way, God made a way.
These brave warriors that went before us, the sacrifice and the price they paid for freedom. Because you see, even in 2002 when they came, the Bolshevik Revolution was, 15 years from then. But they could see the indicators of where the country was going. And, praise the Lord, the Canadian and the U.S. government, they opened the doors for these Eastern Europeans to immigrate. And
it was no party for them, but at least they got in.
It was not. And, many of them didn't make it that first winter. There's a lot of them that died in the cold of, Saskatchewan, Alberta, the Dakotas. Yeah.
This is your farewell tour?
It's very, very difficult to get. Well, there's 4 of us tonight. Usually there's 6 or 7 of us. We were hoping that all 5 brothers would be together this last weekend, but health has just taken its toll on them. It's the Lord, it's up to the Lord. But at this point in time, we don't think as a group we'll get back up into this part of the world. I wish we could, but it's kind of our Thank You Canada tour.
Family reunions will be a song fest, I'm sure.
Absolutely, it will be.
Anything you want to say that I haven't asked you about because I don't know you to ask?
Well, what's interesting is my wife, she came from a very, very similar background in central Alberta. And she's 100% Ukrainian. Her last name was Slusarenko. She came from the Melnichuk crowd, which is a large Ukrainian family in central Alberta.
What's her first name?
Her name is Judy. So it's Judy and Jody and Joanne and James and Jason. That's our 5 in our family. And Jesus, so there's 6 of us. But I met her in Southern California. And a friend of mine had been dating her and said, man, you didn't meet this Judy. She's Ukrainian. She likes pierogies and borscht. And you guys have a lot in common. So we do. We've had 49 years together.
Yeah, and she's got a great voice, too.
She's a sweetheart. Yeah.
God love you. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
Stefan, my pleasure. God bless you, too.
There is not a mother, sister, friend, or brother loves the way that Jesus can. He proved his love for me when he died on Calvary. He gave his life for fallen man.
His
His love is a boundless love, and it reaches down and touches me.
His
His love is an endless love that will last through all eternity. Jesus wants to love you. There is none above you. You are precious in his sight. He will never fail you when the doubts assail you. He'll be with you day and night. His love is a boundless love, and it reaches down and touches me.
Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, and on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Partial funding for Nasha Kasha comes from the Shevchenko Foundation. I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.